Get that knock away from me. I want a real doctor." Congressman Harlan Blaine's voice echoed through Johns Hopkins Emergency Department. The racist slur hung in the sterilized air like poison gas. Dr. Darius Voss, the hospital's most decorated neurosurgeon, stood perfectly still in his scrubs. The CT scan images of Blaine's massive brain hemorrhage still glowing on his tablet. The congressman had minutes to live, and Dr. Voss was the only surgeon in a 200-mile radius who could save him. What happens when the person who hates you most needs you to save their life? The trauma bay hummed with controlled chaos. 3 residents surrounded the gurney where Congressman Harlan Blaine thrashed against restraints. His face twisted in pain and rage. Blood pressure 190 over 110. Valeria Martinez explained, her voice steady despite Blaine's verbal assault. He's performed over 800 successful craniotomies. He literally wrote the textbook on emergency subdural hematoma evacuation. Blaine's eyes, wild with pain and prejudice, locked onto Darius standing calmly by the wall. Even through his agony, the hatred remained clear. "I said no. Get me someone else. Anyone else." But what Blaine didn't know was that his racist voting record had already crossed Darius's desk 3 times. Darius had remained silent during the entire exchange, his dark eyes studying the monitor displaying Blaine's deteriorating vitals. Heart rate 132, pupils becoming unequal. Classic signs of brainstem compression. Hospital Administrator Ronan Novak burst through the trauma bay doors, his expensive suit incongruous among the scrubs and blood. "Doctor Voss, may I speak with you privately?" They stepped into the adjacent supply room. Novak's face was already apologetic, already compromising. "Darius, I know this is unprecedented, but Congressman Blaine is on the Hospital Oversight Committee. He controls $340 million in federal health care funding. If we force treatment against his explicit wishes, his explicit racist wishes," Darius corrected quietly. Novak winced. The hospital board is concerned about the political ramifications. They're asking if Dr. Riley could. Riley is in Portland at a conference. You know this. Darius's voice remained calm, clinical. The next qualified surgeon is Dr. Nadia Hale in Baltimore. That's a 45-minute helicopter flight plus 20 minutes to prep. Blaine has minutes before the herniation becomes irreversible. What Novak didn't know was that Darius had already made his decision, but it wasn't the decision anyone expected. The board is prepared to offer you a comprehensive severance package if you choose to recuse yourself from this case on ethical grounds. The words hung between them like a guillotine blade. Darius studied Novak's face. Years of medical school debt. A career built on excellence and precision. His wife Ilara's nonprofit serving underserved communities. His daughter Lila's college fund. All of it balanced against a principle. "Tell the board I'll give them my answer." Darius returned to the trauma bay, but this time he walked past Blaine's gurney and straight to the computer terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up records that made Dr. Martinez's eyes widen. "Dr. Voss, what are you?" "Look at this," Darius said quietly, angling the screen so only Martinez could see. Congressional voting records. Blaine had voted against the Healthcare Equity Act 3 times, against funding for sickle cell research, against expanding Medicaid to predominantly black communities. But that wasn't what Darius was showing her. "Look at the dates." Martinez leaned closer, her breath caught. Blaine had been the deciding vote against the Medical Malpractice Reform Act legislation that would have protected doctors from frivolous lawsuits, the same legislation that could have saved Darius's mentor, Dr. Tariq Washington, from a career-ending legal battle that drove him to suicide. The room didn't know it yet, but Darius Voss had been preparing for this exact moment. Blaine's monitor alarm shrieked, blood pressure spiking, pupils now markedly unequal. "Doctor." "Voss." The resident's voice cracked with urgency. "We're losing him." Darius walked to Blaine's bedside with the measured pace of a man completely in control. He checked the pupils himself, palpated the skull, reviewed the imaging one final time. "Congressman Blaine," Darius said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You have a subdural hematoma with midline shift and early uncal herniation. Without immediate surgical intervention, you will be dead in minutes. You will lose consciousness. After that, the decision will no longer be yours." Blaine's face contorted with rage and terror. "I told you I don't want your kind touching me. I understand, but I need you to understand something as well." Darius pulled up a chair and sat down, placing himself at eye level with Blaine. "I took an oath not to treat patients who respect me or patients who vote the way I prefer or patients who see me as fully human. I took an oath to preserve life." He paused, letting that sink in. "But you also have rights, Congressman, including the right to refuse treatment from any physician for any reason, including bigotry." What happened next would change medical ethics protocols across the entire country. Darius stood and addressed the room. "I want this documented precisely. Congressman Blaine has explicitly refused treatment from me based on my race. This refusal is being made while he retains medical decision-making capacity. The next available qualified neurosurgeon is minutes away. The patient has minutes before permanent brain damage or death becomes inevitable." He turned back to Blaine. "You have a choice to make, Congressman. You can maintain your principles and likely die, or you can let me save your life and continue voting against people who look like me." The trauma bay fell absolutely silent. Novak's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Voss, the board requests you step away from this case immediately. That's a direct order." Darius touched the intercom button. "Administrator Novak, please have the board join us in Trauma Bay 3. I believe they need to hear Congressman Blaine's decision firsthand." But there was something else. Something Darius hadn't told anyone. Not Martinez, not Novak, not even Blaine himself. The board members arrived within minutes. A parade of expensive suits and barely concealed panic. Board Chair Dr. Serena Montgomery led the group, her face a mask of administrative concern. "Congressman Blaine has the right to refuse treatment. I have the right to refuse to compromise my professional ethics. And this hospital has the right to decide which principles it actually stands for." He gestured to the monitors. "Minutes now. Congressman, you're running out of time to make your choice." Blaine's lawyer, who had materialized from somewhere, stepped forward. "My client maintains his position. He refuses treatment from Dr. Voss specifically and requests any other qualified surgeon." "Dr. Hale's helicopter just left Baltimore," Martinez reported. "ETA minutes." The mathematics were brutal. Minutes of viable brain tissue. Minutes for Hale to arrive, plus minutes to prep and scrub. They'd be operating on a corpse. That's when Dr. Voss revealed the file he'd been compiling. And everything changed. Darius opened his tablet and displayed a document for the entire room. "I filed a formal complaint with the Medical Ethics Board regarding Congressman Blaine's voting record and its impact on healthcare equity. I documented how his legislative actions directly contributed to preventable deaths in underserved communities." He advanced to the next screen. "I also filed a request to establish a precedent whether physicians have the right to refuse treatment to patients whose public actions directly contradict the physician's ethical obligation to promote public health." The room erupted. "You can't refuse treatment based on political." I'm not refusing treatment, Darius interrupted calmly. I'm allowing the patient to refuse my treatment while simultaneously requesting this hospital establish a policy. Do we treat legislators who actively work to deny health care to others? Do we provide excellent care to people who vote to defund that exact care? He looked directly at Montgomery. Congressman Blaine voted to cut millions from this hospital's federal funding, the same funding that pays for the trauma bay he's currently in, the same funding that subsidizes the very surgery he needs. But the revelation that would shatter everything was still seconds away. Montgomery's face had gone pale. Doctor, Voss, are you saying you won't operate? I'm saying I've given Congressman Blaine a choice, and I've given this hospital a choice. We can be a place that bends to political pressure and abandons our principles. Or we can be a place that stands for something, especially when it costs us. Blaine's monitor alarm shrieked again. Blood pressure dropping now. The brain stem beginning to herniate. Minutes. Congressman, Darius said, his voice gentle now, almost kind. I want you to understand something. If you let me operate, I will give you the same excellent care I've given 800 other patients. Your hatred won't change my hands. Your prejudice won't compromise my skill. But your survival will prove something important. He paused. It will prove that the people you despise are better than you. That the kind you don't want touching you are the kind who save lives even when it costs them everything. What Blaine didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Darius Voss had already lost everything once before, and this time, he wasn't backing down. Darius's phone buzzed. A text from his wife, Alara. The hospital board called. They said, "You're about to be fired. Darius, we can't afford." He silenced the phone without reading the rest. Dr. Montgomery, Darius addressed the board chair directly. I need to know right now. If I walk out of this trauma bay, if I let Congressman Blaine die rather than compromise my principles, will you support my decision? The silence stretched for seconds that felt like hours. No, Montgomery said finally. The board will terminate your employment immediately, and Congressman Blaine's family will likely sue for wrongful death. Darius nodded slowly. And if I operate against his explicit wishes, then you'll be violating patient autonomy. Blaine's lawyers will sue. The medical board will likely suspend your license. So my choice is operate and lose my license or refuse and lose my job and freedom. Those appear to be the options. The room watched as Dr. Darius Voss stood perfectly still. His entire career balanced on the edge of a decision. Then Darius did something nobody expected. He laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a desperate laugh. A laugh of genuine, profound understanding. You know what's beautiful about this moment? Darius looked around at all the faces. The board members, the residents, Blaine's hateful glare, the monitors screaming their warnings. I've been the exceptional black doctor, the one who's so good they can't ignore him, so accomplished that they have to respect him, so valuable they can't afford to lose him. He walked to Blaine's bedside one final time. But none of it mattered, because right now in this moment, all you see is my skin color, not my successful surgeries, not my innovations in neurosurgical techniques, not my publications or awards or the lives I've saved. Darius placed his hand on Blaine's chart. Just my skin. So here's what's going to happen, Darius continued, his voice taking on a different quality. Not resignation, but resolution. I'm going to make this very simple for everyone. He addressed Blaine directly. Congressman, I'm going to operate on you not because you deserve it, not because I've forgiven your racism, but because I refuse to let your hatred make me less than who I am. Blaine tried to protest, but his words were slurring. Now the herniation was progressing. Darius turned to the board. Dr. Montgomery, I want every second of this operation recorded. I want a full panel of witnesses, and I want a formal investigation afterward into how this hospital responds to patient racism versus physician expertise." He looked at Novak and Ronan. "I want you to know something. After I save Congressman Blaine's life, I'm going to use every interview, every platform, every moment of publicity to expose exactly what happened here tonight. How a hospital was more afraid of losing funding than losing its soul. The transformation in the room was electric. This wasn't surrender. This was revolution. Dr. Martinez, Prep OR7. Get me 2 residents who aren't afraid of political consequences. Someone call Hale and tell her to turn around. We won't need her after all." Darius began scrubbing, his movements precise and ritualistic. Through the glass, he could see Blaine being wheeled toward the operating room, still conscious, still hateful, still alive, because of the man he despised. Alara appeared at the scrub room door, her face tight with worry. "Darius, the board called me. They said." "I know what they said, but Alara, some things matter more than keeping a job." He turned to face her. "Dr. Washington killed himself because the system broke him. I won't let it break me." Alara's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Then let's make sure every camera in this hospital catches what real excellence looks like. Or 7 filled with controlled energy. Residents, nurses, anesthesiologists, everyone knew they were witnessing history. The hospital's legal team had indeed set up cameras. Blaine's lawyers had their observers. The medical ethics board had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to see if Dr. Darius Voss would actually do it. Darius stood over Blaine's unconscious form, scalpel in hand. The man who had spent his career denying health care to people like Darius, now completely dependent on Darius's skill. "Time?" Darius asked. "We're at minutes from point of critical herniation," Martinez reported. "But he's stable for now. Darius made his first incision with the precision of a master artist, not a millimeter wasted, not a second of hesitation." "You know what's interesting," Darius said, his voice calm as he began the craniotomy, "is that excellence doesn't care about prejudice. This brain I'm operating on right now, it processes hatred the same way it processes love. Fires the same neurons, uses the same pathways." He carefully removed a section of skull, exposing the hemorrhaging dura mater beneath. Congressman Blaine's racism isn't a character flaw. It's a learned behavior. Patterns established through years of reinforcement, not so different from the patterns I'm trying to preserve right now. The residents watched in awe as Darius worked with a speed and precision that bordered on supernatural. Minutes into a procedure that typically took minutes. He'd already evacuated the majority of the hematoma. "The irony," Darius continued, his hands never stopping their precise dance, "is that I'm literally rewiring his brain right now. Removing pressure, restoring function. But I can't remove the pressure of his prejudice. Can't restore the function of his empathy." Dr. Martinez assisted, her own hands steady despite the weight of the moment. "What will you say to him when he wakes up?" Darius was quiet for a moment, carefully cauterizing a bleeder. "I'll tell him the truth. That hate nearly killed him, but it was love. The love of medicine, the love of life, the dedication to something bigger than personal grievance that saved him." Hours later, Congressman Harlan Blaine opened his eyes in the ICU. His vision was blurry, his head wrapped in pristine bandages, but he was alive. Dr. Darius Voss stood at the bedside, chart in hand, the same calm expression he'd worn throughout the entire ordeal. "Welcome back, Congressman. The surgery was successful. Full neurological function restored. You'll make a complete recovery." Blaine's lawyer immediately materialized. "My client wants it on record that this surgery was performed against his explicit wishes." "It's already on record," Darius replied. Every second documented, just like his racist slurs, just like his medical crisis, just like his choice between principles and survival. He set down the chart. Congressman Blaine, you're going to live. You're going to return to Congress and probably continue voting against healthcare funding for communities like mine. But now you'll do it knowing that one of the people you tried to destroy saved your life. Blaine's mouth worked, trying to form words through the post-anesthetic fog. Why? He finally managed. Darius pulled up a chair the same way he had in the trauma bay. Because excellence isn't conditional. Because the Hippocratic Oath doesn't have an escape clause for bigots. Because I refuse to let your hatred define my humanity. He stood to leave, then paused. But Congressman, understand this. Every day you wake up from now on, you'll owe your life to a black man. Every breath, every thought, every moment with your family, it all exists because the person you despise most showed you more grace than you ever showed anyone who looked like him. The story had gone exactly where Darius knew it would go. Everywhere. Every major network carried the story. Medical ethics boards across the country debated the case. The hospital became the center of a national conversation about racism in healthcare, but the real transformation happened quietly in unexpected places. Doctor. Darius Voss sat in his office, the same office the board had tried to strip from him, reviewing a stack of letters, hundreds of them, from medical students, from patients, from other doctors who'd faced similar moments. One letter stood out. It was from a young black surgeon in Mississippi who'd read about Darius's case. Dr. Voss, I was going to quit. After facing my racist patient comment, I was done. But then I read what you did, how you didn't let their hatred make you less, and I realized that excellence is the best revenge. Thank you for showing us how to be better than the system that tries to break us. Alara appeared at the door. The board wants to see you. Darius smiled. He knew what was coming. In the boardroom, Dr. Serena Montgomery cleared her throat. Dr. Voss, the board has voted to establish the Voss Protocol for responding to discriminatory patient requests. We're also creating a fund for healthcare equity research. She paused, and Congressman Blaine has requested to speak with you. Blaine sat in a private conference room looking smaller than Darius remembered. The surgery had saved his life, but something else had changed too. Dr. Voss? Blaine began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know the Medical Equity Act that's coming up for vote. I'm supporting it. Darius studied him carefully. Why? Because lying in that trauma bay thinking I was going to die, I realized something. I spent my whole career denying people like you the very thing that saved my life, access to excellent health care. Blaine looked down at his hands. I can't undo decades of votes, but I can start changing how I vote going forward. Darius nodded slowly. Congressman, I don't need your gratitude, but those communities you've ignored for so long, they need your support. As Darius left the conference room, he pulled out his phone and recorded a message that would become the closing for his documentary about the experience. Excellence isn't about proving our humanity to people who refuse to see it. It's about maintaining our humanity, even when others try to strip it away. Tonight, a racist congressman is alive because a black doctor chose grace over grudges. That's not a victory for me. It's a victory for all of us who refuse to let hate dictate our actions. The documentary would go viral, but Darius wouldn't be there to see it. He had a surgery scheduled in the morning. A young woman from the same community Blaine had tried to defund, and he would save her life with the same excellence he'd shown Blaine, because that's what real victory looked like. After the Blaine case, Darius stood before a packed auditorium at Johns Hopkins. The annual medical ethics lecture. When Congressman Blaine called me that slur in the trauma bay, Darius began, his voice carrying to the back row. He thought he was insulting me. What he actually did was reveal the system we're all complicit in. He clicked to the first slide. Data showing healthcare disparities. We like to think medicine is objective, that science doesn't see color. But everyday Black patients receive less pain medication, fewer advanced treatments, more skepticism when they describe their symptoms. The audience shifted uncomfortably. I could have let Blaine die, would have been justified legally and morally, but then I would have become what he accused me of being, someone who lets personal feelings override professional duty. Darius clicked to the next slide, a photo of himself and Blaine at a recent healthcare equity conference. The man who hated me is now my most unlikely ally in healthcare reform. Not because I convinced him through argument, but because I demonstrated through action what excellence without prejudice looks like. He paused, letting the weight of that land. That's the real power we have. Not to change minds through debate, but to shatter prejudice through undeniable excellence. To be so good they can't ignore us. So skilled they can't deny us. So graceful in our power that we transform even our enemies. The standing ovation lasted. But Darius was already thinking about his next surgery. A young Black man with a brain tumor uninsured. The kind of patient Blaine would have voted to exclude from care. Darius would operate for free because that's what real victory looked like. Not changing one race's congressman, but building a system where excellence and equity were inseparable. The revolution wouldn't be televised. It would be performed one surgery at a time, one life saved at a time, one moment of grace at a time. Dr. Darius Voss had found his battlefield, and he was